Grandy Group missing Brian Neiman today, but Major Garrett, kind of, I guess I could call you my plus one.
Yes.
Here filling in very capably. Lots to
Putting
talk
the major in majority.
That's right.
Okay.
Putting the major. Wow, how about that? There's a radio
You think
career.
you're the only trained broadcast professional in this booth right now.
No.
There's a semi-trained one right next to you.
Yeah, and two of us with a semi-training does not equal one capable broadcaster. But
not even close.
Enough about that. One of the things we were talking about on Friday when I was at CPAC talking to you was with the events unfolding in the Middle East, just how important is it to develop our domestic energy resources. And we thought this would be a great topic to take up with John Felmy, who's the chief economist of the American Petroleum Institute. He joins us now. John, good morning.
Good morning, and let me start by saying thank you all for improving my health. I listen to other stations, and then I listen to you guys and lower my blood pressure.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to do that.
We have medicinal purposes.
Yeah, and I haven't even done a virtual physical spot yet. But let me ask you something about that,
But you have
John.
done a virtual workout.
I have. If we were able to relax regulations and take away some of the barriers that currently exist, and we'll get to those in a moment, do we have the domestic capability to meet our energy needs? And I'm talking obviously about fossil fuels.
Oh, we have an enormous amount of resources in this country, well in excess of 100 billion barrels of oil in conventional terms. And if you produce that over 30 years, it would be 10 million barrels a day, and that's what we import.
So in other words, we've got it. It's apparently statutes and regulations and governments standing in our way then.
That's exactly right. I mean, you have vast areas of the Gulf, the East Coast, West Coast, Alaska that are off limits, and so you can't produce those resources.
Now, John, Mary Landrieu, senator from Louisiana, describes what is going on in the Gulf right now as a de facto moratorium on new drilling. And she says, yes, the moratorium imposed after the BP blowout and oil spill has been lifted, but only in word, not in deed. Is that your perspective as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you could probably reterm it the way some of a permatorium. In other words, while the moratorium's lifted, you only have had a couple permits lifted. And so as a practical matter, until you have permits issued, you can't do anything.
Now, I've covered this issue on and off, John, in Congress for many, many years, and through Republican and Democratic administrations. And the votes are simply not there or haven't been there to dramatically rejigger the way the United States views the cost-benefit analysis of domestic exploration, meaning the votes have always been there to elevate, in a victorious way, environmental protection over domestic resource exploitation or use, whether that's Alaska, the Outer Continental Shelf, or even now in the Gulf of Mexico. Do you believe anything that's happened in the last 6 months, including the midterm election, instability in the Middle East, will change that fundamental political dynamic?
Well, I think the public is getting more educated in terms of the reality of energy policy, that, we get more than 80% of our fuel from fossil fuels. And while it's aspirational to look to these other energy forms and so on for the future, we've got to remember we've got 250 million cars that don't plug in to use electricity from solar or wind. And so we're going to need oil for the foreseeable future, and hopefully folks will recognize that there's a benefit to producing it here.
Let me talk to you about something we mentioned on Friday. Our guest was Congressman Steve King, and we're talking about resources that have, at least at this point, gone untapped. Talking about the reserves in North Dakota. What is it, the Bachman? You know what I'm talking about? How much is there, and how much could that at least alleviate our problem were they allowed to drill in that area?
Well, there's a vast amount there. We're not really sure because we're still developing it. The estimates were in the billions of barrels, but it could be orders of magnitude greater than that with the technology development. North Dakota has been really developing. They're really a model in terms of a lot of states, low unemployment, positive economic growth, and so on. They're now the fourth largest oil-producing state in the country, and that's going to grow. So we could learn a lot from North Dakota.
John, the president's budget, according to reports this morning, will seek $3.6 billion in reduced oil and natural gas subsidies. And the administration will argue, I'm sure, and Democrats already have been saying this in Congress, that these subsidies are either unfair or budgetarily unnecessary. I would assume your industry would be opposed.
Well, for some reason the president hasn't sent me an advance copy. But
I'm stunned.
I will say that the past 2 years, what we saw was misguided proposals to basically raise taxes on the industry. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. It's political spin to call it subsidies. But you break it down into 3 categories. First of all, the provisions that affect all industries, and they're just singling the oil and gas industry out. There are some specific provisions that primarily affect small firms, and you got to remember that 15% of our oil supply is produced by small firms in this country, and so that would be a negative. But, fundamentally, this is a repeat of the mistakes of Jimmy Carter, where they basically raised taxes, reduced production, and increased imports, and that's the wrong way to go right now.
Of course, the Democratic argument would be the consolidated oil companies are very profitable, and with those profits, they should not require or need any assistance from the federal government or the taxpayers behind it.
Well, you got 2 choices. You can either take the money and cause negative things that happened in the past, or you can allow us to spend those earnings on producing more oil and gas to help jobs, improve our trade deficit, and improve the revenue for the